all. And the book tantalizingly opens with a list of the big questions that people have always asked. How can we understand the world in which we find ourselves? How does the universe behave? What is the nature of reality? Where did all this come from? Did the universe need a creator? And when you read a list of questions like that, written by such a distinguished scientist, you get, as I did, very excited. Here we're going to listen to a world-class mathematical physicist give his insights on some of the profoundest questions of philosophy and metaphysics. Now, if that's what we expect, we're in for a shock, because in his very next words, Hawking dismisses philosophy. Referring to his list of questions, he writes, "Traditionally, these are questions for philosophy, but philosophy is dead. It has not kept up with modern developments in science, particularly in physics. As a result, scientists have become the bearers of the torch of discovery in our quest for knowledge." Now, this is an incredible statement for anybody, let alone a scientist, to make, because you only have to read the book to see that it is a book about philosophy. And a book about philosophy and metaphysics that states at its beginning that philosophy is dead immediately sets alarm bells going if you have any notion of the basic philosophical issues. It is, of course, unwarranted hubris, dismissing philosophy, which is a discipline very well respected and represented at Hawking's own University of Cambridge, and I presume at Mladinov's as well. And I wish to suggest that this book constitutes very disturbing evidence that at least two scientists, Hawking and Mlodinov, not only have not kept up with philosophy, but they do not appear to understand much about it. Bearing out Einstein's very perceptive comment that the scientist is a poor philosopher. Now, I'm well aware that people who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones, and that epithet and descriptor may apply to me, but that's for you to judge. But I shall proceed at the level of the public understanding of science, which, if you recall, was Dawkins' chair at Oxford. What are we, the intelligent public, to make of this kind of thing? But first, a comment on that remark that scientists have become the bearers of the torch of discovery. That's very close to the view that we call scientism, the notion that science is the only way to truth. And that conviction really characterizes many of the new atheists, particularly Richard Dawkins and now apparently Stephen Hawking. Nobel laureate Sir Peter Medawar pointed out some time ago the danger of this scientistic view in a wonderful book called Advice to a Young Scientist. He said, "There is no quicker way for a scientist to bring discredit upon himself and upon his profession than roundly to declare, particularly when no declaration of any kind is called for, that science knows or soon will know the answers to all questions worth asking, and that questions which do not admit a scientific answer are in some way non-questions or pseudo-questions that only simpletons ask and only the gullible profess to be able to answer." Medawar goes on to say this: "The existence of a limit to science is made clear by its inability to answer childlike elementary questions having to do with first and last things, questions such as, how did everything begin? What are we all here for? What is the point of living?" And he adds that it is to imaginative literature and religion that we must turn for the answers to such questions. Francis Collins is equally clear on the limitations of science. Science is powerless, he says, to answer questions such as why did the universe come into being, what is the meaning of human existence, what happens after we die. Now, it is clear that Medawar and Collins are passionate scientists, so that there is no obvious inconsistency involved in being a committed scientist in the highest level, while simultaneously recognizing that science cannot answer every kind of question. including some of the deepest questions that human beings can ask. So Hawking appears to be unaware of this. And I want to go straight to the heart of the book, The Grand Design, with this central claim: because there is a law of gravity, the universe can and will create itself out of nothing. Now, perhaps the first question to ask is, what does Hawking mean when he uses the word nothing? The universe can and will create itself out of nothing. Because notice the assumption in the first part of that statement: because there is a law of gravity. That is an assertion of existence. Because there is something, the universe will create itself out of nothing. It's a very odd way to start, isn't it? Hawking assumes that there is a law of gravity. But one might want to be generous and presume that he also assumes that gravity exists, for the simple reason that an abstract mathematical law on its own would be vacuous with nothing to describe, a point to which I shall return. But the main issue surely is this: gravity, or a law of gravity, is not nothing, if Hawking is using that word in its usual philosophically correct sense of non-being. If he's not, he should have told us. So the heart of this book appears to be an assertion that the universe is simultaneously created from nothing and from something, which I do not regard as a very promising start. Now, of course, I am aware that when physicists talk about nothing, they often appear to mean a quantum vacuum, which is manifestly not nothing. And Hawking alludes to it later in the book. We are a product, he says, of quantum fluctuations in the very early universe. I'm tempted to suspect that a lot of this is a bit too much ado about nothing. Now, I know it's late in the morning for logic, ladies and gentlemen, but I just pointed out to you what I think is the first level of self-contradiction in Hawking's statement. But I believe there to be three. And I have subsequently tried to invent a sentence in English that also contains three levels of self-contradiction, and I haven't been able to do so. So my challenge to you is to try and copy Hawking by producing something parallel to it. Let's analyze it a bit further. The universe can and will create itself. Now, if I say X creates Y, I'm presupposing the existence of X in order to bring Y into existence. That is what the word means. So if I say X creates X, I am presupposing the existence of X to account for the existence of X. Well, this is obviously self-contradictory, and it's logically incoherent, even if we put X equal to the universe. To presuppose the existence of the universe to account for the existence of the universe sounds like something out of Alice in Wonderland, not science. Now, that's a second distinct level of contradiction. The first one, you will recall, is the universe is created out of something which is nothing. The second is it creates itself. But then the notion that the law of gravity, that a law of nature explains the existence of the universe, is also self-contradictory. Since a law of nature, by definition, surely depends for its own existence on the prior existence of the nature it purports to describe. And I shall come back to that later. So I would submit to you, however provocatively it may seem to you, that the main conclusion of the grand design turns out to be a triple self-contradiction. Philosophers just might be tempted to comment, so that's what comes of saying philosophy is dead.